So if you obviously consider and compare it to multifamily, we're not like, for the amount of value we get, value adding the CapEx and the cosmetics of a facility, it's nothing compared to some of the upgrades my friends and you guys are doing with tenants and toilets and floors and countertops. I mean, we go in there and we feel great and like, wow, look at what we've done, but it's really not a lot of heavy lifting. The other part of the value add is the operations, right? So we're going in, usually buying from a mom and pop owner that's owned the facility for 30 years, something like that. They don't really understand the value of being on Google Maps, getting Google reviews, having an online presence, being able to automate the facility where somebody can rent a unit without even making a phone call, right? So that's an online rental. And really streamlining the whole rental process, how we're found on the online. The name of the game with self-storage pretty much is, if somebody's on a phone or a computer and they're looking for storage, if you pop up
so
first,
glad you went down that route. And that, especially, look, folks, this show, Cameron, we have pretty even split of, those who claim themselves as a passive investor or some level of operator. And I think it's even more important, folks, for those of you who are investing passively into someone else, to get education and either whether it's hire a coach or just make sure you're making informed decisions, because it's one thing to go and do deals and get partially educated and figure it out along the way. That's good. You will learn. You're going to pay for your mistakes, whether it's real mistakes or whether it's education. You're going to learn, right? But if you are investing passively, I think it's even more important that you make sure you're taking action and educating yourself, like you're doing if you're here today. So
you're listening to the Real Estate Runway Podcast, powered by Quattro Capital, where we are all about alternative business and investment strategies to help you amplify life and maximize wealth. Here's your host, the recovering engineer turned multifamily investor, Chad Sutton.
All right. Real Estate Runway family. Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Runway Podcast. I'm joined today with Cameron Barsanti. Cameron is a fantastic self-storage investor. We're going to talk a little bit about that asset class today. But first, let's get to know him. Cameron, welcome to the show. How you doing today, brother?
Hey, Chad. Great. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm fired up to be here. You got a great podcast, and looking forward to chatting self-storage with you. So
I'm excited, man. Glad to have you on. Glad for this educational opportunity. So folks, whether you're an operator or an investor, this is going to be something you don't want to miss. Let's get into it with your story first. So tell me about how you got into this world a little bit. Why real estate and eventually why self-storage?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was it really started not too long ago, about 4.5 years ago. My wife and I, we were in LA. We had our second kid on the way. I was basically an unemployed actor. Not very exciting. I was writing screenplays. I was collecting unemployment. I think I made like $6,000 that year, a whopping $6K. My wife was very upset at me. As you can imagine, the out of work actor writing screenplays. I had actually just lost her life savings in a feature film that I made. So I was, absolutely in the doghouse. And thankfully, the smart one of the two of us, you can guess who that is. She basically started listening to podcasts on real estate, and her wise old elderly father, basically had told her whole life that multifamily was a great way to, or what she would want to do eventually. So we knew that eventually we were going to get into real estate. What we didn't know is how we were going to do it. And I think I think the biggest kind of the thing that people don't necessarily get taught is that you can actually start investing without a lot of capital, right? And so we were one of the many that didn't know that. And so when she started listening to podcasts like yours and others and Bigger Pockets and you name it, she quickly understood and learned that we could actually start investing with little to no money. And so for us, that was our first big cornerstone, learning and understanding, hey, look, we actually can potentially start getting into this real estate game now. So she basically sat me down, slapped me around a little bit, more emotionally and verbally than physically, and basically said, "You're going to stop doing everything you're doing, and you're going to start doing this." And that was basically start listening and understanding and learning the games of real estate investing. And so I was very obedient. I understood exactly what I needed to do. I dropped everything and full time started pursuing real estate. So her and I both started consuming everything we could, right? Educating ourselves, tucking the kids in, watching stuff at night. And we were very serious about it. We were very inspired, and very quickly just started making moves. So the first thing we did was I was going to start wholesaling. We didn't really have any money, so we pulled out $90,000 of equity in our house. That was our entire, that was all the money we could kind of scrounge to start. And then we started buying real estate. We bought a triplex in Texas. We bought an 11 unit in New Mexico. And then our first facility was 3 years ago. And that was a bank-owned self-storage facility that we stumbled upon. I was under contract. I hired a coach, a self-storage coach. We used to have a multifamily coach. One of the good things we did throughout the whole process is we always had a mentor or a coach. So we're always expediting the process by learning from somebody who was actually, very successful at it. And so hired a guy, bought our first facility, and in the last 3 years, we've acquired over 40 million in self-storage. We're in 6 states currently, closing on our 13th facility in actually Guam in the next 3 weeks. Yeah, wild. Where my wife's from, and now that's what we do full time is we own and operate self-storage nationwide.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so, you said something there that you kind of glossed over because it's second nature to you, but talk about the importance of taking action on what you learn on, but what you're learning, but also, how to take the importance of a coach, right? Because you can take uninformed action or uneducated action and get yourself in a lot of trouble really quickly. So, how did you balance that?
Yeah, great question. You said it, Chad. It really is. I think one of the hardest and most important things is just to take an action, right? And so what I find is actually a lot of people that I talk to already have quite a bit of knowledge and education, whether it's multifamily, single family, flip land, whatever, self-storage. They've learned a lot. They've gathered stuff from podcasts, books, maybe taken some classes, but it's the action part that is actually the most difficult. And it's not necessarily their fault. It's not because they're not action takers, but it's that they just don't quite understand how to start moving the needle forward, right? And I think it doesn't have to be the same for anybody, but something really funny happened to us. And not funny, but I think the unique thing about us is because I was desperate, my wife was upset. We saw this massive opportunity, and so we actually educated ourselves from many different from many different resources, including a coach, but also online meetups, books, podcasts. So we were really aggressive with the education that we consumed. But what I tell everybody, it's like the education, obviously that's really important. It's kind of like your commitment, right? You start committing. It's like when people start going to the gym in January, it's like everybody's like committed to their New Year's resolution, but the commitment dwindles, right? So for us, in retrospect, what we thankfully did was we found ways to not only commit, but then we continued to kind of feed that commitment, right? That momentum. And our biggest momentum was when we pulled equity out of our house. And all of a sudden my wife's like, you got to find a deal. We're paying interest on that, right? And it was a ticking clock. And what we continued to do was always up the stakes, put ourselves in situations we had to get ourselves out of. And so I help people across the country actually invest in self-storage. I'm a coach myself, but what I concentrate on most with people is one thing, and that's actually deal flow. And so going back to what you said, Chad, is the action, right? The action. And so what I find is most people that already have the education, they're still a little bit fuzzy on how do I start moving the needle forward, right? Like, where do I take action? What do I do? And so my best advice is just concentrate on the deal. learn how to not only obviously analyze, but learn how to find and source great deals. Because if you can do that, you'll literally have the keys to the kingdom. Whether you're in multifamily, single family, if you can become a great deal hunter or partner with one, everything else will follow, right? As you know, capital, partners, all that. And so all we did from the very beginning is we got great at finding deals. And because of that, we've been able to leverage capital, leverage partners, leverage opportunities. And so I try and keep things really simple for people, literally only the deal. Because if you have 40 facilities or you have 0 facilities, we're both, you share the same obstacle. And the obstacle is you can only scale as fast as the good deals you can find. I hope that answered your question.
That answers my question and more. I'm so glad you went down that route. And that, especially, look, folks, this show, Cameron, we have pretty even split of, those who claim themselves as a passive investor or some level of operator. And I think it's even more important, folks, for those of you who are investing passively into someone else, to get education and either whether it's hire a coach or just make sure you're making informed decisions, because it's one thing to go and do deals and get partially educated and figure it out along the way. That's good. You will learn. You're going to pay for your mistakes, whether it's real mistakes or whether it's education. You're going to learn, right? But if you are investing passively, I think it's even more important that you make sure you're taking action and educating yourself like you're doing if you're here today. So I love that. And to transition, into some of the meat of today, Cameron, you mentioned in our early conversation that, you were in multifamily for a little while, or you at least explored it for a while, and you wound up choosing self-storage. And anyone who's listened to this show, that we, Quattro, we are primarily multifamily players. We did it before it was cool. We love it. We'll always do it. It's a great investment. There are other types of vehicles out there, and we talk about them on this show. Self-storage being another unit. I kind of group them into unit-based versus square footage-based, right? So you have your warehouses, your office space, all that kind of stuff, your retail space, which is typically priced per square foot. And then you come over here and you have mobile home parks, and you have self-storage, and you have apartments, and these are all kind of priced by the unit. You sign a unit-based lease, right? And so I think they have a lot of similarities. But what attracted you to the self-storage space, over the multifamily space? Maybe speak to that a little bit, and let's
Yeah,
play with that.
yeah, totally. It was interesting because you said you were in multifamily before it was cool, and so I can't even imagine what that looked like, right? Because when I started,
it was 7 and 8 caps. It was great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Positive leverage.
Totally. So when we started, I was in LA at the time, and we were going to meetups with 60 people, and like 50 of them were syndicating multifamily. I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating, but it was like everybody in the world it felt like a syndicator. And so I think for us, we were excited about the opportunity, and I love multifamily. We still own a couple of fourplexes, and I'm sure eventually we'll diversify back into multifamily. It's never going anywhere, as we know, right? And so we were excited about the opportunity, that we were understanding leverage, and that we were going to start getting to invest in real estate without, being able to, have all the capital to do so. But I don't think I was like, it wasn't like, oh, multifamily, I have this huge attraction to it. I think I just had an attraction to the opportunity. And I think typically by nature, I'm sometimes often more attracted to like maybe the stuff that's not talked about as much. And so for me, I was kind of like, grew up in a small town, and I'm like, yeah, but like, what about mobile home parks, or like trailer parks? I wasn't even calling them mobile home parks. Or what about storage? Just because I was fascinated. I wasn't hearing a lot about it. One of the first actually investors I ever met was Ryan Smith, Elevation Capital, huge storage guy. And so that kind of like turned my head towards it right away. And so then, as fate would have it, the fact that by pounding the phone looking for off-market multifamily, I came across a bank-owned self-storage facility. And luckily at that time, I had a partner that was, 28-year seasoned investor. I gave him a call, and I'm like, man, yeah, I found this, facility. It's like 50,000 square feet, and it's partially converted and it's on like 6 acres. And he's like, buy it. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, dude, buy it. He's like, I used to be in storage. He's like, I'm like, it's, X amount. He's like, buy it. I'm like, okay. Like, and it was, so there was a lot of luck to it. But then when during due diligence, I started learning the game, right? A friend and partner of mine, AJ Osborne, has his own self-storage podcast, really the only self-storage podcast out there. And I learned like 10 hours of storage on a road trip, and I was all in. Like, it was, for me, it was like, you know what? I don't know, man, something about this. I see the opportunity. It makes sense, not being talked about a whole lot. And I just never looked back.
Yeah, I love that. And so since then, you've definitely learned the game. You've bought like 13 of these puppies in a couple of years, right? So tell me about, kind of what does it take to, I mean, there's a lot of courses out there, right, that teach how sexy it is to buy real estate, and you get really good at buying real estate. But then what some people don't realize is you actually have to run the real estate after you buy it. You have to make it operate well. It's not a passive investment. So, tell me a little bit about how, you have figured out, like, what are the main strategies and areas of focus? Like, when you're running not just one, but 13 storage facilities, what does your operation look like? How are you managing them? How are you collecting rent? All that kind of stuff. Let's kind of walk that route a little bit of what does it look like?
Yeah, another great question, Chad. So so we're closing on number 13. We've actually sold 2 recently. We're under contract to sell 3 more. And so our operations were getting to a point where we thought we'd have to expand more. And instead, we're at a good spot now. We have an operational manager. We have mainly remote kind of offsite manager / call center employees. And we are remote managing most of our facilities, right? So if you get above, usually, I mean, this is just rough. It varies, but around 60,000 square feet, a lot of times you're at a point where you got a big enough facility where you need somebody on site full time. We do have facilities that large. They're not all having, they do not all have a full-time on-site manager, just kind of depends. But we've gotten very good at keeping everything in-house for now. And so I have an my partner and I, my partner's wife is our CFO. She does all of really the financials and the books and the payroll. My partner and I oversee every facility. My partner's basically, he's great at the contracts, the negotiating when we go to sell. He's a broker, owns his own brokerage himself, very savvy on that side. I'm more the deal finder, and then also like the guy that, keeps the team together, the employees happy, stuff like that. So we're a good kind of mix on that end. And then we have people answering the phone that are like, they're running like 3 to 4 facilities a piece for the most part. They work from home. They love their job. They answer the phones. We have somebody on site who walks the facility once a week, checks for locks, make sure every unit has a lock on it, make sure nobody's moved out without telling us, make sure there wasn't a break-in, anything weird, trash, stuff like that. And it's a very kind of lean and mean machine. I think our average, expense ratio, once we've stabilized the asset, is around 25%.
Yeah, that's really lean and mean. So that's kind of good that you can do that. And thinking through, so it's a little different than somewhere people are living, right? As you're hearing, folks, you have people who store their stuff there, and so I'm assuming that so you have to have a little bit of personnel. Obviously, you said call center. The fact that you use that word, it's a lot more about fielding prospects. I'm sure you do some marketing. You field these prospects, and you have to get them closed, get them in. So what kind of turnover do these buildings typically expect? Is it similar to 50% per year on an apartment, or something else?
Man, that's a great question. I wish I had the stats in front of me. I believe it's around, and I should know this, I believe it's closer to like 80% that stay over 6 months. There's usually a breakdown. It's like 30% stay within 6 months, 6 to 12 months. Maybe it's another 30, and then it's over 12 months is your remainder, 20 or 30%, something like that. I don't have turnover stats in front of me, but one thing I'll say is that it definitely varies from property for us. For example, we own a facility down in southern New Mexico that's right next to a big Air Force base. The turnover on that is a little bit different because we have a lot of people that are putting their stuff in for 6 to 12 months and then deploying. Whereas if you're in a college town or city, you're getting typically a lot more turnover just because it's college students, a little bit more, reflection of the seasons with the college area too. Obviously, nobody's really around in the summertime, stuff like that. Unfortunately, yeah, I wish I had better stats for you, but what I can tell you just in quick observation across our portfolio is every facility is a little different depending on the market it's in.
Yeah, so you kind of drove the point. So I get it. There's kind of a spread of who stays 6 months to a year, but it sounds like about every year everyone's turning over. So that's that. Hence the call center. Hence the the must refill the tenants. And so let's talk about adding value a little bit, right? So do you typically buy these things with the intent to, you mentioned stabilize, so I'm assuming you're adding some kind of value to them. What does that look like to add value to a self-storage facility?
Yeah. So we are definitely value add investors. We're adding value definitely to every facility we're buying. Usually it's a little bit or a lot of CapEx. We've had a great run at just buying deep discounted properties. And so most of the time the deep discount come with a rundown property. So CapEx usually will include at least automating the gate, probably a new keypad that syncs with our software, typically upgrading lights, cameras. We usually go in and repaint the whole facility. We have a great painter that does it at a pretty deep discount. And so it's amazing what a paint can do to, a warehouse and garage doors. We'll add new signage. A lot of time, half the time we'll have to do some asphalt repair or complete like chip coat resurface. Some of the time, depending if the entire property is fenced, if we add a fence to the whole perimeter, and that's about it, right? So sometimes there's springs and latches and stuff like that. So if you obviously consider and compare it to multifamily, we're not like for the amount of value we get, value adding the CapEx and the cosmetics of a facility, it's nothing compared to some of the upgrades my friends and you guys are doing with tenants and toilets and floors and countertops. I mean, we go in there and we feel great and like, wow, look at what we've done, but it's really not a lot of heavy lifting. The other part of the value add is the operations, right? So we're going in, usually buying from a mom and pop owner that's owned the facility for 30 years, something like that. They don't really understand the value of being on Google Maps, getting Google reviews, having an online presence, being able to automate the facility where somebody can rent a unit without even making a phone call, right? So that's an online rental. And really streamlining the whole rental process, how we're found on the online. The name of the game with self-storage pretty much is if somebody's on a phone or a computer and they're looking for storage, if you pop up first, you win, right? That's kind of the name of the game. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And usually it's not only pop up, but respond quickly, right? Nobody wants to sit around
absolutely.
for 2 days waiting on someone to respond. They'll go find a competitor. So
totally. And you had, I'm sorry, Chad, I was going to say, you had mentioned something earlier. When I mentioned call center, the one point I think that's worth making is I call it a call center, but it's not. It's the managers answering the phone, and we've actually stayed away from the call center and third-party management just because by being really hands-on, we've been able to move and turn things over really quickly, right? So maybe an average turnover is more like 6 to 12 months for a lot of the operators, maybe 12 to 18. We're going in there, moving stuff around really quickly and trying to get 3 to 6 months, everything completely turned around. We're answering the phone 7 days a week because it's not a call center. I've hired a call center one time and I called them and I'm like, hey, nobody answered. And they're like, oh, well, it's the weekends. We're short staffed. I'm like, yeah, but you said you answer the phone 7 days a week, so those are the kind of things that by having our own in-house manager who loves their job, that will answer the phone at 8 at night if they have to, or somebody sends them a text at 9 p.m. saying I'm looking for a unit. We're able to take those calls, which has really been important for us.
Yeah, that's super important. And, I guess last question before we get to our final questions of the day. You mentioned being the deal guy, right? That finding deep discount deals is kind of the key to success. So, wondering if you'd be willing to share with the audience a little bit, maybe not specifics, but, at least on general guidelines, what is your method? How do you find these deep discount deals in the self-storage space?
Yeah, happy to throw out some pointers here. And, while we wrap this up, Chad, I mentioned it earlier, deal funnel and that I help people. But one thing that I tell people three things, and it's partnership, it's mentorship, and it's deal flow. And that's the three things that really we stumbled upon early, right? We always had a coach. By having a coach, we were able to expedite years and years of education into days, weeks, and months, right? So we basically learned from the best. And we not only learned how to play the game, but we learned where they were buying in, why they were buying in those markets, how they were structuring deals, everything, right? So literally learning from the pros at the very beginning of our career. And then our partners were the people that we didn't even know were coming, but all we had to do was bring partners or potential partners great deals. And all of a sudden we had people that had been in the business for 20, 30 years partnering with the newbie just because we brought the deal. And so I really love to bundle these three things up. And when people come to me and they're like, I know about the business, I just don't know what to do. I literally am like, partnership, mentorship, deal flow. Don't even worry about anything else. And so then buttoning that up to the end of that was the deal flow. And so that's where it all started. And because we're getting good at fetching these deals, we very quickly realized that, hey, look, we have the opportunity to bring people that have been in the business 20, 30 years, and they'll partner with a dummy like me because everybody wants a good deal, right? And so you asked the question, the deal flow for us, for the most part, it's been cold calling. And so I started in multifamily, like I said, and then I started a wholesale company for single family homes, and I pounded the phones for years. And what that did is I got better at talking to sellers on the phone. With storage, it's crazy because you and I right now, if Chad and Cameron spent 20 minutes together right now, I could probably get a hold of at least 3 self-storage owners I've never talked to. And that's crazy, right? And that's mom and pop, direct to the source. And so we're pounding the phones hard, and we're trying to get direct to seller, whether it's at the facility on their cell phone. We're doing some skip tracing. I have a whole virtual assistant team out of across the planet that help me out with all the acquisitions now, and a full-time employee, Michael, who's a rock star. But we're really primarily cold calling direct to seller as much as we possibly can. I do feel like that's getting more and more competitive right now. And so, we'll send mailers from time to time, maybe send an email or two. And the biggest, I think, without going down the rabbit hole too much on this, if I could give anybody the best tip, I would say that the game is played, the deal machine, the deal flow. I'll give you 3 quick tips. So it's being able to prioritize your leads appropriately, organize them efficiently, and follow up consistently. And so where the real game is played for us is in the follow-up game. So you learn how to start getting leads, but it's what you do with those leads that will set you apart. You got to figure out a way to keep those leads not only organized, prioritizing which ones you should be following up on more than any of the others. And the follow-up is crazy. I mean, you may have to call somebody for every day for 5 months, and you don't want to be a pest, but most of the time they don't even know you were calling and they don't even say anything about it. But the follow-up game is the key. So wrapping it up with saying input versus output. The more sellers you talk to, the more opportunities you'll have.
It's a numbers game, man. And the follow-up is absolutely it. It's great to make contact once, but usually, I'll tell you right now, if you call me asking me to sell my building, it's probably going to be a no right out of the gate. You call me 50 times, I don't know. You might catch me at the right time when I'm frustrated with it, decide to sell.
That's right.
That's how it goes. But I love that, man. So I want to kind of do our ending point here a little backwards, because you do have a bit of an education program that you offer to on the self-storage side. So let's talk about that for a second, and then let's hop to the last two questions. What do you say?
Cool. That sounds great. Like I mentioned, I did start my own program in actually January of this year. I've already helped, probably had 8 or 9 students already close deals. Two reasons why I launched the program. One, I'd been waiting to teach people my whole life about something that was actually worthy. I taught some acting classes, but that didn't count, nor did I really enjoy it that much. But appreciate it nonetheless. But no, I had something that I knew I could teach people, and I love helping people out. And so the biggest motivation behind my program was what I touched on earlier, and that it was, I kept talking to people that had education and were stuck. And what I quickly understood was nobody was helping these people actually start moving the needle forward. Where Storage Life is the name of my program. We're very action oriented. So I don't work with, I can teach people, I can teach you how to operate and everything you want to know about storage in about 24 hours if we have it. In fact, and if you and I took a 6-hour meeting, I could teach you everything you needed to know for the most part, right? Other than actually doing it yourself. But storage isn't rocket science. And once you buy a facility, you'll figure it out. You'll figure out everything else that nobody could teach you. But the hardest part is taking action consistently. So what I really, really, really help people with is making this thought, this idea, this concept of becoming an investor into an actual reality by building out a roadmap, understanding that you actually have to eliminate most of the other ideas and thoughts you have and focus only on a few key things to actually start making progress, building out a roadmap, understanding that if you really want this to happen, you got to have things on your calendar, right? You got to start doing stuff on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that's going to, it's consistency and it's accountability, right? Consistency, accountability. And so you got to figure out ways, once you know how to approach the business and what you should focus your time on, then it's a matter of making it actually a reality, right? Having it on your calendar, calling 10 sellers a day or whatever it is, where you actually start making, again, this thought and this education and this kind of analysis paralysis and actually just turning into a step-by-step process in order to actually start not only taking action, but actually putting together deals and taking them down.
I love that. So how do we find the coaching program that we're talking about?
It's actually just storagelife.com. So you can find me there. I'm on Instagram. So you can, that's the best place to find me, and direct message me as well. People are happy to find me there at just Storage Life Cam, CAM. But yeah, you'll find everything you need to know, and happy to talk to anybody, just even if they're, thinking about what to do next, or I love talking storage. So happy to help anybody I can.
I love it. I love it. So let's get to the last couple of questions. And folks, storagelife.com will be right in the show notes for your clicking pleasure. So scroll down, check that out. And wow, this new Apple thing, I just did a thumbs up and okay. Technology surprises you even live on the show. So here we go. And last two questions. First one, what is your superpower, Cameron, and how does it serve you well?
Definitely hunting deals. Yeah. And so I love people. I love meeting new people. I love chatting with people. I feel like, I've won the lottery being able to invest in storage and in real estate, like just something that nobody ever really taught me. I didn't know existed the way it does. And so I feel like I'm kind of looking for buried treasure every day from my house. And so being able to see my kids every day and I hardly travel, and being able to reach out to anybody potentially across the nation that may have a deal. And not only do I then have an opportunity to potentially buy the deal, but I have an opportunity to also educate a seller, because a lot of times sellers don't necessarily know what they want or how they can structure the deal to better benefit themselves and potentially us. And so I love hunting deals down, and that's the only way we've been able to scale as fast as we have.
I love that. Like you said, it's one of the key pieces of growth there is deal flow. And so flipping the coin over, last question of the day, Cameron, what is your biggest failure? It could be life or business, and what'd you learn?
I've never said this one, but my biggest failure was probably, it was just in life. I moved to Hollywood at 18. I had some big opportunities to work as an actor, and I wasn't ready, and I don't have any regrets. I honestly believe it wasn't meant to be. And sometimes I hate that kind of phrase, but it wasn't meant to be for so many different reasons. But in my head, I was trying hard for years, but ultimately I went through about a crash and burn decade of my life. And in my head, I always felt like I wanted to succeed. I knew I was going to be successful, but I actually didn't know how. And I went down a rabbit hole of thinking that the entertainment was the only thing I wanted to do, partly because I didn't know anything else that I wanted to do. And the reason I bring that up is because I'm sure I'm not the only one. I know we all have had failures or in current struggles in our life, but I went through over a decade of a lot of struggle. And yet I felt like somebody who was always thought they were, had great opportunities and great friends and great family, and yet just crashed and burned and struggled a lot. And a lot of it had to do with not being around the right people and not getting the right information. And so from 20 to 30, that was my biggest failure.
I love that. Well, Cameron, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Folks, check out storagelife.com to check out all the cool things Cameron and his team are doing at his company, as well as the coaching program we alluded to. I assume that's also the best way to get in touch with you, Cameron, is through the website?
Through the website, or you can find me on Instagram too, Storage Life Cam, CAM. And yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. Happy to help.
I love it. Well, folks, this has been another episode of the Real Estate Runway Podcast. Until next time, over and out.
Thanks, Chad.
We hope this episode was insightful and brought value to your day. If so, please be awesome and leave us a 5-star review. Find out how Team Quattro can help you at thequattroway.com. Until next time, this is the Real Estate Runway Podcast.